You have notified us, Tamsin, so we'll be on our good behavior.
Well, there may be people who come in later, but you know,
Right.
we're now at starting time, so
Right.
you are who count. You all who are who count.
Okay, well, welcome everybody. And as you can see today, we have with us Gina Duquesne, who lives here in Ashland and is running for the city council and is gonna just contribute whatever she can contribute. I thought we'd devote this talk to Ashland and what goes on in Ashland and what we can do here in Ashland to deal with racist issues. And that's what I really thought Gina would be able to give us some insights into. And I don't have any particular agenda beyond that, nor do I have any particular knowledge, you know, that I can contribute in this area. But I know that there have been incidents in Ashland, some more flagrant than others. There was a big one recently with those T-shirts that were in Railroad Park along the fence. Someone took them down. We have no way of knowing who did that. We don't even know if those people had anything to do with Ashland.
Saying T-shirts, John?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a list. There were T-shirts all along the fence between Railroad Park and the railroad itself. There's a link fence there, and there were T-shirts fastened to that fence all along the park for maybe 100 yards, 200 yards, with the names of all of Black people who've been killed over the years. And those were all removed overnight, maybe a month, 6 weeks ago. And fortunately, their new ones are back. New ones are up now. So, you know, that's what we're doing. We're putting a stick in the eye of people that try to pull stuff like that, which I'm grateful to the people who put those up again.
Right.
Because I think it's really important. That's a great statement. It's a great affirmation of the side that I would like Ashland to be on in this whole area. So yeah, and I know there was an incident with Christina Clark of OSF being attacked racially. Gina, I don't know, you probably know of more incidents. I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Now?
Yeah, I mean, it's an open discussion. We don't have presentations and wait and hold your questions and all that. Everybody just sort of jumps in when they're ready. And I'm inviting you.
Thank you. And you know, John, thank you for inviting me, and thank you, Tamsin. And I'm grateful to be in a safe space where it's open conversation, and it is a conversation, because my experience is that sometimes we have to have uncomfortable conversations to get on the other side of things. And John's known me for quite some time, and being new to Ashland and coming here and just running up against resistance as being a queer woman, and what does that look like? And oh my God, you want to have a pride parade, and being a Black woman, it's kind of like a double whammy. When people see me, I'm Black. When people get to know me, oh my God, she's Black and she's a lesbian. So it's kind of a double whammy thing, and something that for me living in Ashland and putting things in perspective, I hear a lot of white people and Black people talk about how racist Ashland is and how terrible Ashland is. Is the racism alive and well in Ashland? Yes. Is it the worst place to be in the world? No. I would much rather be here than a lot of other places in the United States, or even on the West Coast. Something that I do know is that I feel like, you know, Ashland, we need to walk the walk and talk the talk. So many times people will say one thing, but if you are my ally as a white person, it's how are you going to stand up for me when I'm not in the room? How are you going to be that voice for me when I leave the room and somebody drops a microaggression or says something that's really ignorant that doesn't pertain to me at all.
Mhm.
And so many times I feel as if, you know, I get to be kind of an ambassador for my people. This is who we are. This is how we live and act. And at the end of the day, if we looked at our similarities instead of our differences, I believe we would be surprised and happy about what we get and what we receive. I really would like to see, as you as my ally, I would really like to see more of that conversation of standing up for BIPOC community, Black, Indigenous people of color. So when you hear someone say something derogatory about us, you could say, that's not my experience, and say what your experience is. I don't want anybody to say anything that's not true. I want you to say how you feel. And for me, as a Black woman, I would rather somebody ask me something than just assume, oh, so you're Black, so you know. Yeah, no, don't assume. Please
Right.
feel free to ask me. A lot of young Black people, they're like, no, I'm not educating white folks. I'm not going to do that. And I understand that. My request of all of us is to educate yourself. If we all know our history, then you can understand better of what Black Lives Matter. So many people, what do you mean Black Lives Matter? Gina, don't all lives matter? Absolutely all lives matter. However, if you're Black in America, it's like you have a target on your back. You know, when Black people quit getting killed by the police,
Right.
then, you know, let's revisit that again. Black people we've had a target on our back ever since they brought us over here. And we're in the 21st century now. And when I see white people educating themselves, reading, asking questions, having uncomfortable conversations, standing up for me when I'm not in the room, that is a true ally. And I see so many, especially in Portland or throughout the United States and globally, so many people of color are in the streets and they're protesting and they're getting hurt, they're getting killed. I can't wait to be able to see this revolution come from the street and go to the tables in the boardrooms of the lawmakers who make the laws and the policies that will protect the BIPOC community and protect us and get rid of the systemic generational racism that's there and it's been there. So I applaud you and I appreciate everyone on this call for doing your part. And when we do our part in it and you walk out in the world and you're my ally, then we're making progress.
Okay, I hear that, and I'm glad to hear it. It seems to me that that's what you said about standing up for you when you're not in the room is one of the most important things that we all can do.
Right.
To catch things when other people say or do them, and as you say, gently remind them. I don't see it that way. That's not my experience. You know? But don't let it go by. Don't just sit there and let it happen without some kind of
Reaction.
reaction to it. Yes, thank you.
Gina, could you mentioned that you're relatively new to Ashland. Could you give us a little bit about where you came from and the comparisons that you've developed of Ashland versus other places?
Well, honestly, I've been here for 14 years, so it's all relatively new. But I've been here for 14 years, and I'm from Los Angeles, California, and I was in Southern California all of my life until my wife brought me here, and here we are. But something that I've learned, so I was born in 1954, okay? And when I was a kid, you didn't talk to white people, you didn't look at white people, you stayed in your little cubby and you didn't go outside of your circle, and you just, children were seen and not heard. And being the person that I am, I couldn't wait to grow up and see what white folks had that we didn't have. And my journeys through life, you know, something that I learned, and I taught my children this and my grandchildren, is just keep talking. Because so many times, especially in my career, I've been on the phone, I'm talking to a client, the client and I, we're hitting it off, we're understanding, we're meeting, you know, our minds are fabulous. Come on down, sign the contract. They get to the hotel and they're looking at all these white people in the lobby and they're looking for Gina. And then I come down the stairs and here I am, and you see this look. This look. And for me, that's where I've always taught my children and grandchildren, just keep talking. Just keep talking. They'll realize that I'm that same person on the phone that they connected with 30 minutes ago. They'll realize that I'm that same person on the phone that they trusted with all this money, that we're going to go make this happen. It's just, it's such that I call it the look. You know, with Black people, we get this look and it's like, oh, okay, relax, just keep talking. And when you keep talking and that other person realizes that, you see the smile come on their face. You see their body language change. And then it's like, okay, so, all right, let's carry on. I know you're okay now. It's, and to me, I kind of look at racism as it's, some people, they do things and they're not even mindful of that, what they're saying or what they're doing, you know. One time, Josh and I, my partner and I, we were at this lady's house. It was a dinner party. And this woman at the end of this, she told me that she was very impressed with me. She's saying, yeah, I'm so impressed with you. And, you know, you speak so well. I saw you knew the right fork to use. And I'm just like, oh my goodness. Meanwhile, my partner was over here squeezing my hand. And I'm like, don't worry, honey, don't worry. And I'm just smiling at the lady and said, good night, let's go. You know, because for me, it's not so much as I'm used to that, is that I've heard it before. For her, she's white. And so she's like, I cannot believe her. And I said, no, it's okay. And when things like that happen, if I can, I use it as a teachable moment. If somebody I know says something that's really off-colored, I'll use it for a teachable moment. And you as my ally can do the same and use that situation as a teachable moment.
Great, great. That's when you describe that, I can imagine the whole thing. I can't imagine being where you are. I can't imagine having to deal with that. You must know that's coming a lot of the time.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I can.
I mean, especially in the work that you do.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And that's why it's so interesting, because in the work that I do, I deal with a lot of money and big money contracts. And at one point in Los Angeles, I had my own business and we sold the business and moved here. But having my own business and dealing with people with a lot of money and dealing with white folks with a lot of money, it was like, okay, I think I'm a great salesperson because my business did good. But it's once people get to know me, and I always come as my authentic self. And people get to know me and it's like, oh, okay. One of the, some things that people will say is that, you know, well, Gina, you're Black, but you're a nice Black person. What does that mean? You know?
I don't know. I don't know.
It's so and it's not that they mean to be hurtful or anything. Oh, yeah. That's why when we know our history, right?
Take care. Gina, you mentioned at the beginning that one of the things we as white people can do is educate ourselves. Can you give me some examples of that? How would you suggest we educate ourselves about this whole racism business?
That's a great question because, first off, none of us learned, in my opinion, our history, our real correct history of the United States of America.
Yeah.
So we all need to educate ourselves. I hear so many times, okay, February comes, yay, it's Black History Month. No, Black history is American history.
Right.
We, I feel like, are so divided in so many things. There's a podcast called 1619. And that is the year that they went to Africa and went and got my people and brought us over here. And the first place we landed was in West Virginia. I heard this podcast and I was like, when I heard that podcast the first time, it was kind of hard to hear. Not just about my ancestors that they brought here, but how so many people who were here before us just wiped out the Indians, the indigenous people of this land, and just mowed over them in their lives. Okay, so let's go get these people over here. And I would suggest 1916. It's a podcast. It's very informative. And I've listened to it a couple of times and I appreciate that. And just by knowing our history is so important. I have friends that are my age and a little younger, and we've talked about how, you know, people whose, you know, white folks, their parents die and you have this inheritance or they leave you this money. And I was jokingly, but very seriously, I suppose, telling a friend of mine how, you know, Black folks, we're on the catch up. We are catching up. Because I was telling her how her family had a head start. My family, they're just now catching up. I had family in Oklahoma when Wall Street, what they call the Black Wall Street, was burned, and many, like over 3,000 Black people were killed, and, you know, and just wiped out generations of Black people who were doing well for themselves. Okay, so then we have to start over from that, and being enslaved, and then Black people are free, but no, we weren't free. And so we didn't have the original starting place. So we are catching up.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
You know,
that's, go ahead, Don.
I was just wondering, when you were considering moving to Oregon, did you check out the history of Oregon? I didn't until I moved here and was absolutely appalled by the history.
In what sense?
Pardon?
The fall in what sense?
Our laws against Black people, it's an incredibly racist history.
Yeah, some of it's built into the Constitution.
Yes, and that
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
I was just wondering, you had mentioned check out the history. I wondered if you had checked out the history of Oregon. So you weren't, yeah, okay, great.
No, I hadn't checked it out. I just fell in love with Southern Oregon. I thought, yay. And I was like you, it was after the fact.
Right.
And I realized my mom couldn't have been born here because Black people weren't allowed here.
Right.
And that it blew me away when I found that out. And so many things are locked into the Constitution that, goodness, don't even get me started on that. But so many things I feel like need to be revisited. It wasn't until 2002 or 2003, you know, the sundown law.
Mm-hmm.
The sundown law, no Black people or Jewish people.
Mm-hmm.
can be on the streets. So that was revisited in 2002 or 2003.
Wow.
And so they said, we're not going to use that, but it's still out there.
They never took it out.
Really?
Oh, it's still there. Ooh.
Yeah.
It's still there.
Is there any
And-
group, do you know if there's any group that's working to correct that sort of thing?
No, no. And something that I was told is that, oh, but we never use it.
Yeah, well, but it's still there. It's still, it's evidence of how bad it all was.
How bad it all is, John, because
Yeah.
when we could go look at the Constitution and just look at how redlining happens in Portland, and it's very real, and how so many times, you know, for my job, for my business, for Newman Hotel Group, I would drive to Salem and to Portland, and you know, I gas up the car, and when I'm past Roseburg, I just go all the way through. There's no stopping, because I want to make sure the car is running well. I have enough gas. I don't need to stop, because I don't want to stop in the middle of somewhere, anywhere. And one time I stopped in Wolf Creek, and you talk about the look. Everybody was looking at me like I was a Martian.
Really?
And I just thought, let me hurry up and get my gas and get out of here,
Wow.
you know? And so when it comes time, and to me, these people, they just weren't educated. And something that was mentioned before about the racism here in Oregon is that Black people being on that catch up, Black people, a lot of places, and sisters in Eastern Oregon and Pendleton, I've gone there for conferences. I'm the only Black person, and it would be probably 1,500 white people, at least.
Right.
And I'm the only Black person.
And that's a real problem that I don't know the answer to. Is how is it that anything? What can we do to attract BIPOC people into, say, Ashland? Or I mean, Ashland is expensive, so into Oregon. I mean, is there a way that we can make it more hospitable somehow?
Well, I believe we can. And I believe we can because when you see you, then you'll go there. You know, but if you don't see people that look like you, then you're not going to go there. So you know, there's a group of young Black people, and they have a group that's called So Black, Southern Oregon Black Legislature, something or another, but they're called So Black. And I was able to sit in with them a couple of times, and then they asked me, Gina, you got to go because you're running for council, and then winter was back. So I said, okay. But something that I did leave with these young Black people were that I wanted them to know that be what you want to see. If I am sitting in there with a room full of young Black folks and they're talking about we're not here and we're not there and we're not, be where you want to be. And these are young, intelligent Black people with families, and they're growing and they're thriving here. But we want to thrive in a safe environment, in a safe place. So one thing that I feel is that I want to see Black people on city council and the school PTAs and the school boards and managers and directors and COOs and CFOs, and being put when Ashland hire people of color. You know, I would like to see the chamber, when you hire people of color. I would like to see the chamber do a bit different commercing. So when you put the information and the collateral out there on the internet or your website or materials, I want to see people who look like me. And so I feel like collectively we can do this, but when people just look at, well, so-and-so's the best person for the job, are they really the best person for the job? You know, my grandson is 21 years old. He lives in California. And of course, he's my grandson, so he better vote. And we were talking about what's on the ballot, and they were talking about affirmative action. And unfortunately, or fortunately, we have to have affirmative action out there on the ballot, so we can see equity. And that's unfortunate, but whatever means necessary, the words of Malcolm X, we got to do what we have to do. And so I encourage my people to go out there and be involved and get involved. However, when we go out there and get involved, please listen.
Right.
Please be mindful.
Be mindful of.
Be mindful of who you are as a white person. Be mindful of the privilege that you have. You know, sometimes I know white privilege because I've seen it. I've not lived it, but I've seen it. And in some points, maybe I have lived it because we're going to get her instead of her. So be mindful of what you have experienced in your life, things that people who look like me will never experience, not unless we have allies. Because Black people, we need our allies. Because I feel as if Black people could have stopped racism, we would have done it a long time ago.
Gina, can I ask you about a term that you used a couple of times a few minutes ago?
Yes.
You've been talking about Black people and white people, and a few minutes ago you used the term people of color. In your mind, who are people of color?
In my mind, people of color is anybody who's not white. If you're Mexican, if you're Latinx, if you're Asian, if you're brown, Black, you are
anyone
person
other than
of color.
anyone other than Caucasian white?
Correct.
Okay.
I think that's what BIPOC means. Isn't that a kind of an all-inclusive term for people of color?
Yes,
Yeah,
And it's more, the reason I asked the question was more than just terminology. It's a question of self-identification. And when do you identify yourself as a Black? And when do you identify yourself as a person of color, i.e. a non-white?
Yeah,
Well,
because for instance, what John brought up, BIPOC is Black, Indigenous, people of color, BIPOC.
Okay.
And
Sorry, Gina.
go ahead. No, go ahead, Tamsin.
I was listening to Nataki Garrett on a Zoom call talk to a co-collaborator of the Carolyn Bryant piece that they are doing together, White and Black. And the piece is about the woman who accused Emmett Till. So it's the whole Emmett Till story. And Nataki Garrett said in her talk that I can't use her exact words, I'm sorry, but she's obviously really pleased that people seem to be a little more woke now. On the other hand, you know, that for her, as one of the few Black people in this town, there's a bit of a burden to it. So that's why I particularly appreciate your coming on this call to talk to us, just, you know, because it can't be easy. I've been the first whatever sometimes here and there, but never the first Black, obviously. And so that's hard, isn't it?
Well, honestly, Tamsin, when George Floyd got killed, and then so many things were brought to the light, because like I said earlier, Black people have been getting killed for years. But I think because of the pandemic and life was kind of put on pause, that his death and the way he got killed
Mhm.
was really polarized. And at some point, it was exhausting. It
Yes.
was exhausting because people were coming to me and, Gina, what can we do and what should we do? And I never thought that I'd feel that way, but at some point it was exhausting, and it was just close the door, turn the phone off, regroup. Because when people get killed, when my people get killed, it's a little bit of me that chips off every time.
Mm.
And the way that this young man was killed, it was so tragic.
Mhm.
And it was exhausting at one point, you know. However, I feel as if at that time, so many people were coming to me and allies, Gina, what can we do?
Mhm.
And I just thought, you know, who polices the police? If every white person I knew, every person just got on their computer and sent the same letter to their state representative, to their Senate, to the chief of police, we are not going to stand for this anymore, however you want to word it, and just send the same letter every day, once a month, every 2 weeks, whatever, to the same people, even if they didn't read it, if they were inundated with all of this, we're not going to stand for this anymore. Because I have faith in the people. I have faith in the people of Ashland. I have faith in the people because we are Ashland and we are Oregon. That is one big reason why it's so important to me for Black people to be seen, for people of color to be seen. It's so important. How do we get Black people or BIPOC community into Ashland? Be seen. And to be able to have allies like yourselves out there waving the Be Seen flag, out there speaking up for me when I've left the room, out there speaking your truth and educating yourself and others.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Mhm.
Dot, were you going to ask us something? No, I guess not.
So I think, I mean, I feel, and I'm not the person to do it because I'm not willing to, but it's upon us to do what you said, Gina, to begin by writing letters, to begin by taking action on your behalf. That's what we can do.
You know, absolutely. That's what we can all do, because people at that point, when people are like, what can we do? And these folks were sincere. What can we do? And some people, well, I'm too old to march, or no, we can all get on our computers. We can all put together your thoughts and send that once a month, every 2 weeks to those same people. And I feel like doing that, we have the back of these young people who are out here protesting, because we need everything. We need the protests, we need the letters, we need the phone calls, we need the prayers, we need everything. And because so many people don't understand, well, why are they still out there marching? This is why. My email is going to tell you why. And to be able to have allies, you know, like I said, if we would have stopped racism a long time ago, but it's not for us to do.
No, it's so woven into the white culture that's what I'm really wrestling with is where do we begin to dismantle it? You know, it's really overwhelming to think about for me.
What about what you said, Gina, about the thing that's still in the Oregon Constitution that should not be?
Well, when we look at, you know, even just getting the Oregon Constitution and reading through that, and holding the people in office, holding them accountable. Why is this in there? You know,
Right.
by holding people accountable, and there's no accountability. People have just been running amok and doing whatever. But by holding these people accountable, it's so important. That's very good, Tamsin. That's one way of
Yeah.
unraveling this. And this is generational. That's been going on forever and forever. So we've got to start somewhere.
Okay, that's a good beginning point.
I remember an incident when I was living in California as a child. I was in the Bay Area at that point. And I've told this story here once before that we found out there was a family in our church who were Black, and he was a professional. I can't remember now if he was a doctor or an attorney, but you know, he was quite capable. They wanted to move into the town next door to us. We were in Redwood City. This was in San Carlos. And they found they couldn't because there was a law on the books in the 50s that would not allow anybody to sell a house to a Black people. So the church, without even thinking about it, put together a full-page ad signed by virtually everybody in the congregation saying they can move next door to us if they want, and the law was taken off the books. So it's kind of like you have to look at what the situation is and see what makes the most sense.
Right. Well, that's
It worked very well.
okay.
So John, is this going to require an amendment to the Constitution since it's not
I would
the
say
law?
so. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you know what the requirements are for that?
It's a lot easier than amending the United
Oh,
States.
good.
Yes,
This
it
sounds
is.
like
that.
another case of informing people. This is here, we don't want it. And then
I
you
can
get a
see-
petition or
I can
something to
see that as our
get it
next
moved.
project is going to be to put together ways that we can start to do this.
A petition would work. We need to find out exactly what needs to be done. but-
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
And you and I could research that.
Yep.
I'd like to ask Gina, coming back to the police issue, the relationship of the police to Blacks and the number of incidents that have occurred. I'm inclined to believe, I'm not sure I do, but I'm inclined to believe that it's a relatively small fraction of our police force in the United States broadly that are the bad actors. And that if we could weed out the bad actors, the neutral and good would take over. And I'm wondering whether you share that point of view or whether you think that the problem should be attacked more fundamentally in the way we police crime in our cities and our states.
Well,
In other words,
that-
there's a movement that says basically wipe out police forces and reinvent the whole concept of policing. Do you share that view, or do you think that we can
It's ridiculous.
correct police forces by going after the bad actors?
you know, that's a great question, and I am not wanting to wipe out the police force or wanting to have to start over. I feel like the best way, when I look at a big picture, the best way to begin to police the police, for lack of a better phrase, is to hold them accountable. Hold them accountable. I'm going to use Breonna Taylor. I mean, this woman was in her house. She was sleeping in her bed and she got up because of the commotion. Her boyfriend's in the house with her, who had a gun that was legal for him to have a gun. And he shot a police officer that was breaking into his house, and he had no idea who it was. That no-knock law is stupid. That shouldn't be there because that's setting up the police to get killed, like this guy got shot. But he had no idea who was breaking into his house. And then the police let go of all this ammunition into this woman's house and kills her. And no one is held accountable.
Yes.
No one is even questioned. So to me, the best way is hold the police department accountable for their actions. That's on a broad picture. When
In
I
other
look,
words, In other words, have somebody police the police and not have them self-regulate.
Yeah, I don't think they should self-regulate.
Right.
When something like this comes in, because I mean, the guy who was in the house, Breonna Taylor's boyfriend, I forget his name, but when he shot, they immediately grabbed him, threw him in jail for attempted murder. And then the cops who actually killed this woman, they're walking around. And this is not by a long shot the first incident. This is just the most polarized incident right now. When I think of local police, when I think of Ashland PD, and when I think Ashland, I think Talon, Phoenix, they're all in the same jurisdiction. I would like to see who's policing our police. I would like to, you know, you have this EDI course or this non-bias course. You have this course that you take, you check the box off, and then you're good for a year. No, you know, I feel as if, and being quite honest, I believe that when a lot of police officers, they come on the police force, I believe they have great intentions. Some of them might be there and they get jaded or whatever. I don't know what happens. And some police come in for the sole purpose of, I'm a bad police officer.
Yeah.
And I feel as if that accountability is so strong that from looking at it throughout the United States to looking at it right here in Ashland, people need to be held accountable. People need to be trained properly. What does that training look like? How often is that training given? And who do they answer to? And I know I'm not supposed to talk about law and all that good stuff about local government. However, I'm hoping and I look forward to seeing that change.
That's what I was going to ask you here in Ashland. What's your feeling about, do you feel like the police in Ashland are your allies?
When I think about the police here in Ashland, I think that, are they my allies? Yes and no, and more no, because I don't feel, for instance, the police, I know the police department, so if I did something, do I feel like they throw me down on the sidewalk and handcuff me and throw me in the joint? I don't know. I feel kind of okay about that. However, I have a beautiful black son. And he is a big, strong, tall black man. The police don't know my son. My son, if he's walking down the street and somebody says a black man did it, I don't even want to think about that. I don't even want to think about how I would act. I don't even want to go there. So, no, I don't feel that way, John, because another big thing is the indivisible. They had a forum and the police chiefs were there at this forum, and the police department in Ashland PD was asked, do you have racism in your department? And Ty O'Mara said no.
Oh.
And I thought, you know, no, you can't say that.
Now, do you think he believed it, or did he say it because he had to keep up appearances?
Well, it doesn't matter. He said it.
Well, no, but it's easier to weed it out if he's, you know.
I think he believes it.
I think so too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he really believes that. No, you know, not in my department.
Exactly.
No,
Right.
you know. But yet and still, I see a lot of unhoused people that are discriminated against.
Right.
I see Black people who are discriminated against. There's a young Black couple just moved here from LA, and her fiance has been pulled over 10 times, and they've been here for a matter of months.
So how about if Ashland maybe becomes one of the first to create a commission, a citizens commission? You just have a bunch of
Councilman who is
volunteers.
running for our city council.
Pardon?
Very interesting. So can I call you back
Oh.
a little bit later?
Hey, mute yourself. There you go. Thank you, Tamsin.
Rich,
Yeah, Gene, I think this is another arena that Ashland we could actually, begin taking a step that would open this process up, and still support the police in being good
Yes.
policemen.
Yes, yes.
It's not anti-police to do this.
No, no,
It's trying to create, as you say, accountability.
yes.
Yeah, the
Yes.
key to holding the police or anyone else accountable and having good results occur from that is to have the body holding them accountable represent all interests.
Yes, yes.
So your commission or whatever it is has to have representation from Blacks and other points of view that are not commonly held.
Exactly.
Rich, another important piece of this story has to do with the history of the police in American history. And it's not a pretty one at all. And also the role of the police unions,
Yes.
which is even worse.
Yes.
There's a lot of history which doesn't just point to individuals, but points to the institutions.
Yes.
Yep.
That's
And
the
while sure
systemic.
there are great and good police here and there, there are. But institutionally, there's a gigantic issue and always has been in this country.
That's come to the fore recently with the police unions.
Mhm.
That they're absolutely not fair. They're not balanced. They're not, they way over protect these policemen.
Overly over defensive,
Say again?
overly self-defensive.
Exactly.
And you can actually, I know we're getting a little off topic here, but you can actually make the same accusation of labor unions or teachers unions.
Right.
Can go overboard in protecting
right.
their constituents.
Well, actually, police unions are different institutionally from the other ones. They're not part of the AFL-CIO. They're not part of the standard union apparatus. They're a different entity from the other unions.
Okay.
But I think what you all are suggesting is great. But anyway. Okay, I've said it.
Yeah. Well, I think holding, going back to accountability and looking at right here in Ashland, because something that you brought up, Tamsin, it's an institution that's tight. So being able to penetrate that, looking at the big picture, meaning looking at the United States of America, that can be a large task to take on. However, looking at right here locally, we can do that.
Right.
We can do that locally.
That's what I'm thinking.
How would you take the first step locally?
Locally, I would, something that's been kind of tossed around the table is creating a commission of citizens who live in Ashland residents, and having everybody represented at the table to be that civil commission or social justice commission, whatever we're going to call it, whatever it would look like, to be able to have that. So that means that, for instance, this woman, her daughter went to a very popular store in town, she went to purchase something, and the person who worked there was following her around the store.
Mm-hmm.
And then at one point, just really made a very rude remark to this young woman. The little girl was crushed. She went home, she told her mom, the mom's upset. Where does the mom go with this?
Exactly.
What does the mom do? So the mom goes to the store and gives the store owner the what for. And so if the store owner fires this person, that person just takes that bad attitude right with them to the next store. rather than to be able to use this as a teachable moment
Mhm.
and say, no, this is not how we do it. We do it like this. There's different layers of this that I would look at, to have a council, a commission, a group of people, whereas the BIPOC community, people of color, could go there and say, you know, this didn't make me feel good. I wasn't welcomed here. This made me, to be able for the BIPOC community to be heard and have commission. And also, when people are hired in our stores, and to have EDI classes and courses for if you're hired in a hotel, if you're hired at a retail shop, this is what you read, this is what you do, and then you're held accountable. So that means that that salesperson who followed that little girl around and who said the things that she said to her, instead of firing that person, be able to go to a class or be able to have that communication with somebody who is a Black person, to say, you know what, you did this and this is how it made her feel and this is why. Because once again, so many people who are not in the BIPOC community say things that they don't think, they just talk, you know? And so to be able to nip that in the bud, I feel like Ashland could really be that, this spearhead this. You know, we are located right here on the border of Ashland and Oregon. We are the open door to Oregon. And I would love for people to come through or drive through and say, oh, okay, it is okay to be a person of color. It is a safe place. Because one thing I learned in travel and tourism, which is my background for Newman Hotel Group, is that when people travel, they want to come to a safe place. And if I am driving through here and I get stopped by the police, I'm not coming back. So to start right here in our backyard with holding the police accountable.
How far would just more publicity, more awareness through opening up unfortunate or bad situations to public view versus enforcement? How far would just opening up the awareness of the situation go, in your opinion?
Well, I want to make sure I'm answering your question correctly. I know that there was an incident, for instance, at SOU. And the first incident was the word nigga was written on the walls. And so what did SOU do? Well, let's hurry up and paint it over and cover it up and don't tell anybody. No, that was a teachable moment.
That's what I mean by opening up the situation.
Yes.
In some sense, shaming people rather than enforcing regulations.
Even better is informing them, not even just shaming them, because then they get resentful.
Yeah.
But really teaching people to really begin to see people of color, everybody else, as a person, not just as somebody with dark skin or whatever. It's, you know, it's.
Gina, when you related that story of the little girl in the store here in Ashland, what came to my mind was, and this goes along with educating our citizenry here in Ashland, why would it be so hard to believe that some other person who was a customer in that store, a white person, might not have gone over and supported that little girl and said something kind to her, and also something of a, hey, there's a better way to speak to this child, to the person who was saying those bad things. And that to me would come down to educating our citizenry. And I think we can do that in a myriad of ways. We could write an article for the Ashland Tribune. Is that what it's called?
Tidings.
Sorry.
Tidings, yeah.
The Tidings, thank you. I'm still kind of new here myself. we could write an article for that newspaper that described that story and wake up some of our citizenry.
Yeah.
And while on that subject, I'd like to ask you just a quick question, Gina. Is there any way that we as individuals, when we encounter in this city people of color, can acknowledge that in a way that is not finger pointing? I'm talking about a positive way of acknowledging that. Or is that something that a person of color would rather not happen?
Oh, no. Just the example that you just gave, if a white person had gone over to this little girl and been supportive of her, that would have been huge. That would have gone a long way, because not only is that little girl feeling damaged, but her mom, and, you know, and just, oh, so this is yet another example of this is what happens when you're Black in Ashland. Just that example that you gave, and something that I'm going to tell you that goes a long way. It's just walking down the street and saying hello when you pass. Just saying hi. You know, when my partner and I moved here first, and then my son moved here about a year later. And my son had come to Ashland just once before he moved here, and he loved it. And when he moved here, he was blown away. He said, "Mom, you walk down the street, people say hi to you." You know, he was blown away. He was just, you know, I could move tomorrow. My son, he'll stay here forever. He was blown away with the acceptance, and that goes such a long way. Just saying hello, being acknowledged. You know, I heard this young woman say, this beautiful young Black woman, she said that living in Ashland can be invisible.
Oh,
Wow.
She said you can be invisible because you walk, you're there, but you're not really there. You know, you're not seen, you're not noticed. And she's a beautiful young Black woman. And when she said that, it just made me so sad. And so just that being seen, you know, it doesn't cost anything. It's free. It's, you know, it's just so satisfying to be able to be seen.
Thank you for that. And again, sharing personal stories is something that Tamsin asked us not to do during this conversation. And so I won't, but that does reinforce a belief that I have myself, but I didn't know how it would feel for a person of color.
I think you should tell your story.
Oh, because I've been telling my stories all time.
I want to hear Janine's story here too.
permission.
Did you say it was okay, Tamsin? I didn't hear that.
It just, what has sometimes happened is that people, white people have gone on their stories about, I'm not a racist, I'm not a racist, I'm not a racist. And other stories in that direction. That's all I was trying to.
Mhm.
I understand. Okay, then I'll make this very
Yeah.
quick. Then it's not about being racist. Yesterday, I went to the post office here in Ashland, and as I was coming out of the door, instead of trying to use my hands to push the door open, I was trying to use my shoulder. Well, it wasn't working very well because the door was kind of stiff. And so, and I had a mask on, and so did the gentleman who was walking in have a mask on. And so he held open the door for me. And I looked up at him, and he was a Black man. And I said, "Oh, thank you very much. That was very kind of you and sweet." And I used those words, kind and sweet. And he looked at me and he said, "Well, so are you." And I said, "Well, thank you very much." But we had a conversation over something as simple as his opening that door for me. And he was a young guy, you know, and it felt, I don't know, Gina, it just felt so, so wonderful. There was a connection. I wish that we could have gone and had a cup of coffee together. It was reinforcing. But I also wondered, did I go overboard with kind and sweet?
No, he said, so are you. That's beautiful. See, it's those little things, and I think that we
Who
as
wouldn't say
people-
thank you?
Yeah, she said
No.
that was kind and sweet.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you know, honestly, I think it's the little things in life that go such a long way.
Yes.
And sometimes things are so huge and they're like, oh my God, I can't do anything. I'm a little grain of sand on this big beach. But if we didn't have all those little grains of sand, we wouldn't have this beach. We wouldn't have us. And so it's the little things. And I'm just going to quote my friend John. He said, giving and receiving are the same. And the first time I heard that, I was like, what? But you know what you did for that young man, both of you walked away. You both felt good. And he's probably remembering that just like you are.
Thank you.
Something that happened years ago, again, when I was in the Bay Area, is that a fellow jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge and left a note behind. And the note said, if one person smiles at me on my way to the bridge, I won't jump. And that really stuck with me. So I try to smile and say hi to everybody I see because, but just something as small as that can make somebody's day.
Yes, yes. And I'm sure you made his day. And it's so just how do we dismantle it? Little things like that from, I'm going to read the Constitution, we're going to work on changing it, to just the little things when we go out of our door and say hello to a person of color.
Mhm.
You know,
Great, great.
It's-
Okay, well, we're technically
Yeah.
at the end of our time. Is there any last thing you want to say, anybody? Or
Thank
Gina?
you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
thank you.
Thank
And
you so
some,
much.
Thank you, Gina.
thank
Thank
you
you.
all. I'm so
Thanks,
glad
man.
you're here. And I want you to know that I am always here for all of you. I want you to know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well,
Gina.
thank you.
Yeah,
And
Thanks
we're
for-
glad that you're here.
Yes,
very glad.
okay.
Thanks for setting this up, John and Tamsin.
Yes.
Yes,
You're
that was
welcome.
Come
wonderful.
have dinner in our dining room
Everybody-
when it's open again.
If we ever open it again, that would be great.
What was that phrase? Dining room?